My friends, to read the first reading from Genesis and then today's gospel from Mark is to experience a jolting wish lap. While the first reading vibrates a poetic union between the human couple, the gospel crashes with a straightforward decree on divorce and remarriage. Somewhere in the background of today's passages hides the sacramental idea, analogy, that refers the church as bride and Christ as her groom. This Sunday's readings invites the faithful, all of us, to search their hearts, our hearts, to the bigger picture when reflecting on the union of couples. The opening verse from today's first reading introduces the human condition. It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a suitable partner for him, as we heard in our reading from Genesis. In God's attempt to find a suitable companion for the man, not yet referred to as Adam in this narrative, the desire is to soften the existential threat of loneliness. The image is one of a parent who wishes their child to find peace in a world that we can feel harsher when experienced alone. It is not good for anyone to be alone. You know, a remarkable thing happens with the shape of the text towards the end of our first reading. The passage shifts from prose to poetry. This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one shall be called woman, for out of the man this one has been taken. You know, the meter and the rhyme are clear from the Hebrew, especially with the last line. This one will be called woman, for out of man she was taken. You know, we might kind of scratch our heads for a bit and say, why is poetry all of a sudden used at the end of this text? And rather than dismiss this as a random bit of verification, we need to keep in mind that biblical poetry is the structure used to illuminate wonderful things. And when this man finds this one, it becomes a moment to celebrate with the first poetic lines in the Bible. The impact is profound, as one indicated in the last line of the first reading, and the two became one flesh. Now, we'll see in today's gospel that Jesus will quote the above verse from Genesis today, and has in our gospel reading, before he attempts to sway the acceptable teaching that marriage may be dissolved when the couple faces difficulties. As we heard, the Pharisees pointed to the place in the law that says it is lawful for a husband to release his wife. Moses permitted him, explained the Pharisees, to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her. They quoted a passage from Deuteronomy that speaks more about the technicalities of adultery on the part of a man who attempts to remarry his wife after publicly divorcing her. It also shows protection for the woman to have a legal document in her hands to secure her status in society. You know, my friends, in ancient cultures, whether the Greco or the Roman or the Jewish, divorce seemed straightforward. Marriage was a contract between two families, not just two individuals. And sometimes, however, the bitterness could linger indefinitely between the couple, and therefore a man would release himself from their bond. In rare occasions, the woman may have exercised the right to divorce too, but in practice it was seen as a right of the man. Jesus goes against this accepted practice and reminds the crowd that married couples was meant to be seen as one flesh from the beginning. Now, all of us, or most of us as Catholics, hold on to this sacramental view of marriage as lifelong, which removes divorce as a viable option to dissolve the union. In reality, married Catholics still separate and may attempt to annul their marriage altogether, rather an involved and lengthy process. Another way to think about this whole topic is to return to the ideal marriage found in Genesis, that the two become one flesh. The goal of the sacramental marriage is not just a lifelong commitment between the couple. Although this may be a remarkable feat, a couple could remain bitter until the end, which would distort the purpose of the union. The goal of marriage is a union of hearts and minds, so that the two individuals are no longer separated, but close to one flesh or one heart. This is why the marriage analogy of the church as bride and Christ as groom works so well. The goal of the church is not just to stay with Christ in a long-time relationship. The church is meant to become one with Christ, who happily becomes one with us. In other words, the analogy is God's poetry for us. I would like to end today's thoughts by sharing two thoughts that we might take with us from Mass today and during the week, and hopefully longer think about. What sustains a marriage in today's society? Secondly, what does a union between church and Christ look like in your life and in the life of our faith community?